intros, Miss Clavine here. I'm here to talk to you guys about our measuring equipment, okay? So we've currently watched videos from Mr. McCallum and Mr. Bonneau about converting recipes and units of measurement. But what do we use to measure those ingredients? So that's what I'm going to talk to you about, okay? So first of all, we have talked about grams and kilograms and milliliters and liters. So we're going to divide those two categories. Grams and kilograms are what we use to measure our dry ingredients. Examples would be, if you're in my baking class, flour, sugar, different types of flours, brown sugars, all those dry ingredients, okay? Volume are milliliters and liters, things like water, milk. And if you're in culinary, same thing applies, okay? Dry ingredients, rice, vegetables, wet ingredients, stock, water, okay? So two categories, and that's how we're gonna separate how we measure them. So in front of me, I have the different types of equipment we use. On this side, I have gram and kilogram scales, and over here, I have our liquid measuring vessels, and this is a Baker scale, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So let's talk about scales first of all. So like I said, we use grams and kilograms to measure our dry ingredients. So we use a kitchen scale. Now this one here is a digital scale, which we primarily use, and this is a balance scale. Both do the exact same thing. But what's really important to notice is how much a scale can measure. This particular scale can measure 5,000 grams, also known as 5 kilograms, so you can weigh up to that amount. This particular scale can measure 1 kilogram, so a much smaller amount. Now when you're using a scale, you need to have some sort of a vessel to weigh your ingredients in. Obviously, I'm not going to dump flour or sugar directly onto this scale and expect to measure it that way. So I have a bowl, a stainless steel bowl. They're all over the kitchen here, so when you guys come back, you'll know where these things are. We're going to put the bowl on the scale to measure our ingredient. In order to do that, you need to turn the scale on. There's a button on this scale, happens to be the on button, that also says tare, T-A-R-E. Some scales will say 0. Both are the exact same thing. So what that means is to zero out your bowl. This bowl is our vessel that we measure into. It's not part of our recipe. So we put the bowl on the scale and then we press the tare button. Now my scale says 0. So I'm now ready to measure into this bowl. Okay? So on to our liquids. I have a few different measuring cups here. And you guys are going to notice on one side of these we have milliliters and liters. And on the other side we have ounces and cups. No bueno, we don't use this side, okay? Just like Mr. Bonneau showed you, we use the metric system. So that's why I'm talking about grams and kilograms and milliliters and liters. So we're only going to use this side. Now this particular measuring jug measures 2 liters or 2,000 milliliters. This one, 500 milliliters, which is half a liter, and this one, 250 milliliters. So when you're measuring out a recipe, you need to look at the amount, think how much am I measuring? Am I measuring 1.5 liters, 1,500 milliliters? If so, would I use the cup that measures only 250 milliliters, or would I take this jug that has a clear line right here for 1,500, okay? So it's about having the right tool for the right job. So liquids, dry ingredients, okay? Now a couple of more things for the bake shop. We also have measuring spoons. And on these measuring spoons, we have, this one here says 1 teaspoon or 5 milliliters, okay? We often use these in the bake shop for very small amounts. So if I am using the teaspoon side of it, I would use that for a dry ingredient, something like baking soda, baking powder. But if I'm using the milliliter, that would be for a small liquid like vanilla extract, okay? Now write this down. You want to keep this in your notes. 5 milliliters equals 1 teaspoon. There are 3 teaspoons in 1 tablespoon, okay? So 15 15 milliliters in 1 tablespoon, which is equivalent to this. So I use the liquid measuring of this for small things like vanilla, and the dry, 1 teaspoon, 1 tablespoon for baking soda, baking powder, those types of things, okay? So those are typically the 3 things that we measure with. Now, if you are in the baking class, you will also see this contraption. This is a baker scale. It's a balance scale as well. And what's really, really nice about this scale is that it's super accurate because it doesn't run on batteries. Our digital scales over here, they run on batteries. And what happens to batteries? They die, right? So then you have to replace the batteries. You have to make sure that these are accurate. These don't have batteries, so they're never going to die. How this works is, this is our vessel to weigh into, and this is a counterweight. You put it on the other side, they weigh the same. You add weights. We have increments of 500 grams, 1 kilogram, and so on to measure. So this is the primary measurement for a baker. Without the vessel on top, you remove the balance weight and you can measure raw dough when you're making tons of loaves of bread, okay? So this is what we use. Let's talk about what we don't use, okay? All of you are at home right now. Some of you may be baking, some of you may be not. And you're likely using cup measurements, 1 cup, half a cup, 2 cups, okay? That's great if you're at home, but that's not what a professional uses. That's very Susie Homemaker, okay? So we don't use those. Those are used for dry ingredients. You're measuring a cup of flour, a cup of sugar, okay? But 1 cup to me may be very different than 1 cup to you. Therefore, we don't use those. Weight is what it is. It's never wrong. Therefore, we use a scale, okay? Now, like I said, with our milliliters and liters, if we're measuring 1.5 liters, we would use this. If we're measuring something smaller, like 150 milliliters, we would use this. The same thing goes for these scales. Some of these are in grams. This scale registers in grams, not kilograms, because it only weighs 1 kilogram. If you are going to measure something that is 2.5 kilograms, would you use this scale? No. This scale, the digital scale, weighs up to 5,000 grams, 5 kilograms. Therefore, you could use this scale to measure kilograms as well. Okay? That is about all I have for you. So, key points, the difference between your dry ingredient measurements and your liquid ingredient measurements, what we use these for, small amounts, and that we don't use cup measurements, okay? That's it, that's all. Good luck with everything else, and stay safe, guys.